This video will be positive, but I want to front load this with a few grotty necessities. Things for the inevitable few people who clicked on this just to screech hateful shit. Then I want to say things that I pressed record to actually say. Hello again, I am Blunty. It's Pride Month, and while I usually don't dedicate a video on this channel to it, socio-politicals being a bit outside the usual content thematics here, I am doing it this year. If you don't like that, if you're about to type, I didn't subscribe for this kind of content, then fine, don't watch it. Unsub if you're so confused and offended by it. That's fine. Now, for those who did click on this just to express some kind of anger or hostility, know this. Of lesbians, gays, bisexual, transgender, intersex, and asexual people, and anyone anywhere within that spectrum of what I've recently started affectionately calling the Rainbow Alphabet Brigade, your hate can't stop them. Your bullying can't stop them. And I'm saying can't, not won't. Won't would only imply if there were some sort of resisting army on a mission with an agenda. You can stop an army if you try hard enough. No, you can't stop them with any tactic, no matter how hostile and mean. You cannot stop them any more than you can stop the sunlight. I mean, sure, you can hide from the sun. You can even yell at the sun. You can even convince yourself that the sun is just some sort of liberal conspiracy to trick you into buying sunscreen or into thinking that hydrogen exists, even though you can't actually see it. I mean, you're told it's so small it's invisible to the naked eye, but how can you trust them? They're scientists. But the sun does exist. It's made of mostly hydrogen, and there's nothing you can do to change that. Your belief, your hostility, and like it or not, the Rainbow Alphabet Brigade are the same. Every bit as bright and warm and full spectrum as anyone else you'll ever meet. They are who they are. It's not like they woke up one morning and thought, you know what? Life, it's too easy. I'm going to yank on the old heteroconformity handbrake here, drift around the corner sideways, and select the harder life difficulty mode. That seems more interesting somehow. And hateful types doing anything they can think of to make someone else's life suck more because they think everything that's statistically the majority is the only correct thing that can exist just makes them shittier humans. Dumb humans. In fact, very shitty and very dumb humans. You know what else is a statistical minority in humans? Green eyes. Only 2% of us have green eyes. Well, I say us, mine are brown, but you know. And that means statistically, there are more gay men out there than there are people with green eyes. And when's the last time you heard someone being beaten up in the street for their unnatural emerald eyeballs? Their vile, verdant, unnatural peepers. Now, I'm not saying you have to make any effort to understand them, any more than you're being asked to fully comprehend the concept of nuclear fusion of hydrogen in the sun, or the genetic mutations that led to green eyes in the first place. The only thing anybody is actually asking of you is, don't be an asshole to strangers who are being a thing that cannot possibly make your life worse. Some gentle-spirited green-eyed girl out there falling desperately in love with a blue-eyed girl and spending a wonderful afternoon cuddling on a picnic blanket under the warm spring sun can, in no way, make your life worse. So either be happy for them and the joy they give each other, or if you can't manage the basic humanity for that much, just leave them the frack alone and don't be a petty little asshat. Don't storm over there and yell at them for having the audacity to have a picnic on a warm spring day, or having green eyes, or being two girls that like to kiss, hold hands, and do other naughty, warm, sweaty things in the dark of the bedroom, or with the lights on, your choice. Now, I live in Sydney, Australia, home of one of the oldest and longest running and largest gay pride parades on the face of the planet. And for some chronologically relevant context here, it started out as a protest, by the way. And this, amongst many other things, has meant that Sydney is one of the most rainbow-friendly places in Australia. It ain't perfect on that score, by no means, but it's better than some places. But I grew up in the 80s and 90s in Hobart, Tasmania. A place where until 1997 there were still anti-homosexuality laws on the books. They weren't really enforced, but they were still there, legally on the books. And even when they were repealed, it was only done so by one vote in the Legislative Council. I grew up in a time where, and I hate saying this word, but it's relevant here, faggot, the pejorative, not faggot the bundle of sticks bound together for the purposes of fire fuel, and the other, rather more Australian term, meaning the same thing and intended to be used in rather the same way, poofta, were still some of the most common insults you'd hear thrown about, both on the playground and, in the pub and whatnot. Personally, I always hated it. It never felt right. And when I was younger, I was never even quite sure why, but the words always felt grotty. And I didn't even personally know any openly non-hetero people until I was already in my late teens. Such was the repression in the communities that I was exposed to growing up. I'm sure I in fact did know a few non-hetero people, but they weren't out about it because, quite frankly, they probably didn't feel safe being out. Now, I was a shithead as a teenager. I'm ashamed of many of the things I said and did to other people. But I can at least say that there's not a person on this planet who can say I was shitty to them because of their race or sexuality or gender. I was shitty to them because I was a shitty person, full of rage and frustration, and I didn't know what else to do with those feelings. I was out of control. In my 20s, I was finally diagnosed as being bipolar and a high-functioning autistic, which did go a long way to explaining why my ability to socially fit in rarely went well and why I was so confused and frustrated when it came to being misunderstood by others. And indeed, I had so much emotion in me, it literally overwhelmed me at times, and I didn't have the right tools or understanding to comprehend or cope with that, so I just lash out uncontrollably. Not nearly the same thing as someone in the LGBTIA+ acronym family I know. Bear with me, I'll get to the point. But it was at least a useful framing device for me, a perspective I later used to try and start to understand just how hard it can be to have outside forces attack you, get angry at you, bully you, and scream at you for things that are just part of who you are. Things you didn't choose, things that are just inherent threads of your personhood. And I know, even sideways relating the whole mental disorder experience thing to non-hetero people is problematic in its own right. That's not what I'm driving at here. Please, again, bear with me. But the most common thing I do see used to attack trans people in particular is people calling it a mental disorder. And these people just need to get help. But even if it was, which I personally don't believe, but even if it was, that still is not a reason to bully them. And here's what I'm getting at. I am bipolar. That is a mental disorder. That's a mental illness, medically recognized. It's not something I caught. It's not something I chose. It's not something I can just not be by getting therapy or taking pills or just cheering up. It's part of who I am. There is no denying it. There is no escaping it. There is no just hoping it will go away one day. And bullying me because of it, as I have been, by the way, just makes the bully a shittier person. It doesn't devalue me as a person. It doesn't make me feel like the victim. It makes me pity them a bit because no one can act that way towards another person without something being broken inside them. I know this because there was something broken inside me that I didn't understand, and it made me into a bully. It's something they don't understand about themselves and how they relate to other people, and for that, I pity them. But these experiences also taught me that being consistently, constantly misunderstood can lead to my own reactions to that becoming hostile, or make me withdrawn and closed when dealing with other people. Or indeed, if you like, closeted. And that's where the danger to self lies in all of this. Bullying someone for being part of the Rainbow Alphabet Brigade or whatever reason makes you a worse person, is indicative of something being wrong with you, and also can lead to that other person that you're targeting being a worse person by a result. And that is your fault as the bully as well. You're making yourself worse, you're making them worse, you're making the entire human existence worse. And that is something you can control. So with that imperfect perspective of mine, framed within the experiences that I have, and to those I've come to understand, or at least try to understand from the subsequent couple of decades of making every and any effort I can to properly understand what my friends, associates, and peers in the Rainbow Alphabet Brigade deal with, feel, and love, I say this: acceptance and tolerance is irrelevant. I, you, them don't need to accept the sunlight, nor tolerate its existence. The sun is just there, and without it, life would be worse. I mean, scientifically speaking, there would be no life on Earth without the sun, which provides the energy for life to exist on Earth. But if you go around pointing out that, you're ruining my goddamn metaphor and kind of missing the point. But that's you. You are here. Undeniable, irrefutable, bright and warm and essential for life to be good. And of course, just in case my metaphor needs to be even cleverer, sunlight does of course contain within it the entire spectrum of a rainbow. See what I did there? God, I'm smart. And much more, by the way. Some of that spectrum causes cancer, so I'll stop dissecting the metaphor at this point. Again, it's an imperfect narrative device, all right? I accept that. But like the sun, I see you. And unlike the sun, I will look directly at you. I mean, the whole high-functioning autism thing might make extended eye contact a bit tricky for me, and I might stare at your mouth or earlobe for a while. Oh, damn metaphors. But I see you, and I'll stand beside you, and I'll go to bat with you if that's what you need from me. But I know mostly all you really need from me, all you want from me, is to be seen. You need no one's permission to exist. You are you, and no one ever, anywhere, by any means can take that away from you. And that, to me, is what Pride Month is. Obviously, that's not what it is to everybody, but I can only speak from my perspective. So happy Pride Month, people. To use a 1990s sitcom-approved vernacular of your people, make it fabulous, Queen. Wait, is Queen 90s? I think that was later. God damn it, now I hate myself a little bit. Was that funny or just cringy, by the way? I can never tell when it comes to this stuff. I'm trying, all right? Thanks for watching. I am Blunty, and big hugs to my Patreon people, whatever letters you like.